Okay, let's go.
All right. Next area is Happy Creek. This would include housing as well as the road. So to let you know what we're doing for Happy Creek Phase 2, we are currently working on an RFP to get the design of this road done. Last year we submitted in the Smart Scale funding for Happy Creek Phase 2, and we didn't score well at all, and we received $0 in funding. So Smart Scale happens every 2 years, so we got another year. So the idea is to improve our score so that we can get funding. And what's critical about Smart Scale is it's different than the revenue sharing, is it's fully supported. There is no contribution on the town's end. So the more we can improve our score and the more that we can achieve those funds through VDOT, the less our taxpayers will have to pay.
So what do we do to improve our score?
Number one is we got to get we got to get a design of the road, so that we know what our costs are, what you know. Then we can start working on easements and acquiring easements along Happy Creek area. So there's a lot of stuff that has to happen, even though we probably wouldn't start construction until 2025, 2026 most likely. But there's so many other steps that have to happen. The problem is we haven't got off the first step yet, and that's what we're working on now, and that's the RFP for the road design. The road has been designed, but maybe 20 years ago. It's in metrics. We can't find a soft copy. All we got is a paper copy. And needless to say, 20 years old, it needs to be re-looked at and re-engineered.
So what do we, I think we need to get the design. I would like to make a plan to improve our score. I mean, I won't rehash all this, but I've been very vocal about the fact that with the middle school there, with Leach Run there, and now with ambulance going to start frequently, that road, that's going to become an even bigger issue going through that turn.
Yeah.
The first EMS to go through there and crash into an oncoming car is going to be a disaster.
Yeah, that was brought up to me too, was that has ever been that road.
I hate to see it take that long to have something done with that.
We're going to develop
Like having the plan
That's
done.
the plan, right? Start doing that with until like 2025 or 6 or something.
Is that the date?
what?
You think it's going to, let's ask you this, if we were to resubmit to the state for revenue share or develop a plan, resubmit, what's the timeline that we're realistically looking?
2025 probably, 2026.
5 years out?
It's crazy.
Unless we pay for it.
Right.
Unless we pay for it.
Anything we can do with that.
I thought we already had a plan, a phased plan.
Like I said, the engineering drawings are over 20 years old. They're in metric. We can only have a paper copy, so now we have to redesign the whole thing. Because you figure 20 years standards have changed. They don't do metrics anymore. They were pushing it back then, and everything else. And ownership of land's changed. And 88. Oh,
$12 million increase in price tag.
yeah,
on it, too.
exactly.
Right now.
I'll champion that if you want, but the front row of P2 is, we get those housing going out there.
Joseph, for all
The FRLP.
Limited partnership?
the limited partnership, there were some proffers that was presented, that was approved, so he could do that development. If you go back and get Jeremy to look at those, because I know there was some improvements on Happy Creek Road.
I was part of that, I was on planning commission when that was happening, but I saw stuff for potential flyway, if that was ever done, but nothing to straighten out Happy Creek. And it doesn't even touch Mary Shady. There's no proffers in for that. A lot of it, the proffers were on the on the Shenandoah Shore side of things.
That was on the second and third phase too.
That's right.
Coming in.
I thought there was some there in 606. And since we did the Leach Run Parkway, I just wondered.
That was second and third phase.
I think there was something related to I don't recall if the overpass of the bridge.
I remember something about it.
If the road was executed to go straight down to the redesign of Shenandoah Shores.
So staff's gonna develop a plan to how we can improve our score and funding for Happy Creek. We're gonna put this together and present it to council by October 30th.
That's good for the date, but, are we gonna be able to get any money through VDOT on our money that we have set aside in, trying to think of word, we have money set aside each year in the state, urban development. Can we get urban money, could we check the state to see if they would pay for part of this? Because I know there's some money left in that project.
I'll have to do some investigating work, Gene. Maybe we can talk offline. I'm not 100% sure where.
I think you'd have to get in touch with the urban development in Richmond in order to find out for sure. But I know that each year we accrue so much money by population in that urban division.
Maybe they could help us acquire the right of ways.
Yeah.
And then that's all dealing with funding, so
Yeah.
you've got it. All right. I'll just put that there for my notes. So yeah, there shouldn't be a problem for staff to put together a plan on how I know what the sequences are, but we'll put them in writing so that everybody knows where we're at. And Gary, you're gonna task that. All right, so that takes care of Happy Creek Road Phase 2.
So the goal of it is to get it as 100% funded as possible.
Right.
As quickly as possible.
And as quickly as possible. So it's money and time. Because in all honesty, this is overdue for the simple fact the school and the hospital is getting out in front of us on that.
Does it improve our score to partner with the county and the ask because of what's out there? No?
Well, no, we are looking at every avenue. It's almost like grant writing to get funding through
Okay.
VDOT. So that's what, we're going to take a different tack this time. We're going to maybe get somebody else to help us write this in a grant type of format. But yeah, we are already currently doing this. We're already evaluating how we can better our score. So we'll formalize it in writing.
I think you ought to consider pulling in Valley Health as well. Because between the county and Valley Health together, putting in their reasons for the money.
Okay. Yep.
And Valley Health has grant writers.
Okay.
Maybe that could be their contribution to this. You good?
That's the road. Now, does anybody want to talk about housing development? It was mentioned on one of the goals as well in the Happy Creek area.
Which housing development
Don't
specifically?
disclose.
Which housing development specifically? Or
Oh,
just
it was so
development in
general in the goals. It was just talking about Happy Creek area. So I got some roads and I got housing. And so I didn't know where that was going. Maybe it was all on roads, but I didn't know if.
I guess the roads would depend on the housing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I know we've got quite a few developments out there that are platted, but there's no movement, but, I don't know.
I'll tell you the impression I get about that. Platted, no movement. This, what I have been told by someone who has a large platted property in the town limits is that about 10 years ago, town council went through a very, maybe longer than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, no growth stage. And the regulations that they were put in place really took away the economic ability for people to build affordable houses because of all the requirements that were put in as far as the road widths and other parameters that were put in to make it so restrictive that it just didn't make sense to do these projects. So I think if we're going to evaluate anything in Happy Creek area, we've got to consider evaluating some of our ordinances.
Subdivision ordinance?
Subdivision ordinances and planned urban development ordinances, or whatever you call it, to make sure we are, reasonable. I think that's the biggest thing I heard. I mean, I sat down with one individual. I sat here, and that person sat right there where Gene was, and I took it for about 12 to 15 minutes. I took it because that person was just not happy whatsoever. And, you know, we've got Bill frequently talking, all of you talking about workforce housing. Well, these people aren't gonna, you know, if our ordinances are such that they can't come in and put workforce housing in and make a reasonable ROI, they're just gonna sit on it. And that's what I think's happened.
This one's a big one. So we're gonna reevaluate the P and D and subdivision ordinances.
Can we give that to planning commission?
They work at your pleasure. I mean, that is what they're designed to do. If you wanna.
Well, but I think we need to give them some
Well,
guidance.
yeah, you have to
because-
give them the.
But I mean, as far as the
charge.
workload,
Right.
to evaluate and do.
So we're gonna reevaluate ordinances, or shall we say,
How do we make this as user
I tell you what I'd
friendly
like
as
to do, I'd like
possible?
to have the planning commission, I'd like to see a committee of 3 developers or 2 developer representatives and engineers or some, because here's what happens, I think a lot of times, and I'm not finger pointing the planning commission, but you get a certain group of people on planning commission that has a certain philosophical idea of growth and of what they want to see, and all of a sudden now you get something to come out of the planning commission that is just not our intent. I want to find a happy compromise, a happy medium between what the developers want and what, you know, in the best case scenario, our planning commission and maybe our town council wants. I mean, I think there needs to be a group put together to have this dialogue. There's one individual in particular I can think of who spent a lot of time with Jeremy on it. I think Jeremy's even recognized some changes that could be made.
I think it's a good idea, especially with a developer or two in that committee, because they're going to give their input on, you know, what's really affordable
Yeah.
for them to
Yeah,
put in.
you're
because
asking me to put a-
Why are you going to put in,
Right.
like a $15 million infrastructure when, you
When
know,
I
you
can,
don't
I can do it
make-
for 7, it's
Yeah.
only, this is how good it's gonna look for
Yeah.
7.
So-
Now I have $8 million to spend in lighting.
Yeah,
Or
so-
pedestrian safety or.
so we're gonna establish a committee? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm
Why
not
don't we
gonna
get a committee together, put something together and bring it to council?
And then we can task it to the planning commission if you want. I'm good with that.
What's your pleasure?
Silence is consent.
Sounds good to me. Jay?
Well, I'm kind of in the corner here. I've heard 2 different things.
I was just gonna say, can you summarize it one more time and I would say yes or no?
I mean, I've heard referred to the planning committee, and then I've heard established possibly a staff/citizen committee to address it. I mean, what's
How
council?
good we get,
As Mayor Teach was saying, let's get some of these builders and sit down with our planning commission, and maybe they can go over what works and what don't. See if they can get something written up that would satisfy all sides involved and bring it to us by the end of October maybe.
Okay, so we're gonna,
I don't think we'll do it by October.
why don't we get some of these developers,
End of
builders,
December, end of
Yeah.
December.
and a couple of
We have time to do all that
Right.
stuff.
commission members together, let them get together, and then after that, after they get something that they all agree on, then take it to the planning commission. Because if you have a couple of planning commission members there, along with the 2 or 3 developers, builders, I'm sure they'd probably work something out. Then take it to the rest of the planning commission, let them see their proposal, whatever, if they all agree or disagree, let them make changes if they can, then they can bring it to us.
Okay, I like it. Chris Holloway's gonna spearhead it.
Yep.
You,
And we're gonna have him.
let me say this, you gotta get with VDOT, because VDOT's got standards that we have to follow.
Well, that'll be,
Side, width, street of the streets, if they're primary, secondary,
Sure.
or whatever.
why don't we have Jeremy Camp in on that committee?
committee.
I think if you look at subdivision ordinance, it's already got those requirements in there, showing what
We can have Jeremy there to make sure that nothing's,
How do you get VDOT to make exceptions? How does that work?
It's hard.
Is it?
Yeah. They have guidelines set down by the general assembly on our street papers.
Right.
If it doesn't, it's not built by the state, their criteria, then you don't get street papers.
Right.
Like primary road, you gotta have at least a minimum 6-foot right of way, 40-foot streets.
All right, so we got to establish a committee to address P&D and subdivisions, ordinances by, this is just to get the committee established.
Get your time.
Give me, leave,
Committee could get established by end of September.
yeah, September 30th.
You gotta get people involved.
September, October, November,
But,
And Chris is champion this one?
yeah.
yeah.
And then say preliminary report end of January, is that possible?
I think so. Yeah.
Committee will provide report by, did you say January 30th?
Yeah.
That's also, that's together.
Looks good. Anything else? What's next?
Health insurance.
Health insurance.
So we need a plan.